Hello, this is Peter Diadamo, and this is the first in a series of videos that I'll be making to show how to use the Datapunk Hunch program that I've been working on. In this video, we'll actually create a new Hunch instance so that you can see how easy it is to actually create a very simple scenario and how that basically then gets published and sent on to the other Hunch users who can basically either comment on it or append their own changed instances as well. And we'll also show how you can assign a legacy to that instance because as the author of it, you're actually allowed to essentially rate over time how efficacious it was. So right here we're at the Hunch dashboard. I'm going to assume that you've already done the decent thing and registered. And you log in from any page. You can log in from the main Hunch page, and I've already gone ahead and logged in. So this is the dashboard, which is kind of like Grand Central of Hunch, and we are going to go down here to where it says create new instance, and we're going to create a title for our instance. This is going to be a case scenario of a 65-year-old man with IBS. And we can just say lifelong irritable bowel, poor diet, and high stress lifestyle. We won't really add any keyword tags or identify who we're particularly interested in getting help from. You can actually change this later. This will now basically take us to the basic Hunch instance editor. And so the first thing we're going to need to do is to get up our chief complaint. So we're going to actually use the first row here, which is the first of three encounter rows. And encounters are essentially, they're sort of like a chief complaint alley. So one of our first chief complaints is obviously going to be this gentleman's irritable bowel. And as you've seen, I've clicked on the little plus sign in the cell telling Hunch that this is the cell that I want to insert a symbol tag. And so we're now going to look for irritable bowel. Now, one easy way of doing this is to simply search the tile database. There's 12,000 tiles. Certainly, one can go through them to try and find inspiration for things that maybe you didn't think or know that you wanted to insert. But a very simple way of doing this is to simply go ahead and search. And we can even limit the search to the tile libraries that we're interested in. In this case, we're looking for the ICD diagnosis for irritable bowel. So we'll search on this, and here we find that basically the tile that corresponds to 564.1, which is the tag, symbol tag for irritable bowel. Now we'll tell Hunch that we want to use that, and then basically hit the big button to insert it into our instance grid. Now you'll see that the instance grid actually does have a tag for irritable bowel. So one of the things that we might want to rule out with irritable bowel is perhaps maybe Crohn's disease would be a reasonable rule out if indeed there were some of the other symptoms. And so we can basically do the same thing and just basically insert a tile for Crohn's large intestine. We have no evidence that he has it, but it's certainly something that we want to rule out. Now, we should probably put some information in here that has to do with the person. So we can basically do this. We can put in some person demographics. And sometimes when you're trying to insert multiple tiles and you kind of know what you want, it's easier to work from the tile list. And in this case, we'll go to demographics and pull up the demographic library and tell Hunch that we want to insert a tile for adult. Actually, we're going to use the tile for elderly. And the gentleman is male and he's Caucasian. So we'll go ahead and select these three tiles, hit the button, and Hunch will pump them into our person-specific components. Constitutional components oftentimes can be things that have to do with maybe a element of identification on an individualized or biochemical individuality basis, or a constitutional component in Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. It's something that represents a kind of a pattern recognized between other people that this particular person shares. So I'd like to basically put in some constitutional components as well. I'm going to go to the tile list excuse me, and go to classic polymorphisms and put in the fact that the gentleman is blood type O and he is a non-secretor. Okay, so we'll select those tiles and we'll pump those in as well. So now you can see how easy it's been to essentially put together an instance just by actually 2 or 3 clicks of the mouse. And every time this is the case that you've inserted a tile, it's automatically been saved as well. Now, actions are a little bit more different in the sense that you have to sort of be thinking about the sort of strategy behind them. One of the things I like to use in irritable bowel disease is arabinogalactan. And what I'm going to do is search for the product that's made by North American Pharmacal called ARA6, and I'm going to insert that in there. ARA6 is a wonderful soluble fiber that helps break down certain types of components into short chain fatty acids. I'm also going to optimize by basically inserting a tile. Again, I'm going to use the tile list for North American, and where are you there? North American Pharmacal. And I'm going to use the product called Deflect O, which is a lectin blocker, and I'm going to insert the product called Intrinsa, which are basically products that have to do with colon health. Intrinsa is a butyric acid supplement, and Deflect is a lectin blocking supplement. So in essence, what I've done here is created a particular scenario that's been saved. And now the interesting thing about this is that I can at this point, the entire thing is available for me to continue to edit, but until I actually hit this check mark, I have not published it, meaning that ultimately I'm free to work on this to my heart's content and then release it to the general publication population when I feel that it's ready to go. I mentioned before that you can create legacies. So one of the things that we could do with this is at a certain point in time to actually come back, perhaps maybe 2 or 3 weeks later when we've seen the patient again, click on the legacy editor, and the legacy editor brings up the therapeutics that are associated with that encounter. So we see here the 3 products that we have actually put into our grid that are related to the encounter irritable bowel. And I can basically actually do a sort of a weighted verdict on these things. For instance, if I move the thing all the way to +3, I'm actually insinuating that the product was very efficacious in this situation. If I move it to 1, I would assume that the product basically was moderately efficacious. If I move it to some negative number, I'm actually telling the program that the product may have not helped at all, or if indeed the patient may have come back and said that it maybe exacerbated their symptoms. So then basically at this point, I save the legacy, and now that particular legacy is now part of the history of this instance. And so later on when we develop the expert systems analysis, the thing that's going to come back and tell us things that we didn't know versus what we tell Hunch now, which is things we know. That legacy information is going to be part of a whole suggestion algorithm that can give you information that'll make you a better doctor and a better physician. So we'll end this video by pushing the publication button, which now tells us that the button, the instance has been published to the world at large. And we can see this if we go over to the list instances screen, and we see over here again that we have published this 65-year-old man with IBS scenario, and now it's available to the Hunch world at large.